Hi everyone, this is Leelavati and I'm working as an assistant professor at Triveni Institute of Commerce and Management. So today we are discussing about the topic called forward contract or future contracts. So before entering into actual concepts, let us discuss about a meaning of derivatives market. So, derivative market. The name itself says a market is a place where both buyer and seller meet each other and a sales transaction takes place. So, what do you mean by derivatives? A derivative is a contract between two parties which derives its value or a price from an underlying asset. So, a meaning itself says that a value of a one asset is derived from the value of another asset. For example, the value of a butter is derived on the basis of a value of a milk. So, a butter price will be fixed by the manufacturer on the basis of a price of a milk. So, this example says that there is two variables, so that is independent and a dependent variable. So the value of a one dependent variable will be fixed on the basis of a value of another independent variable. So this is about a meaning of derivative market. Simply we can understand that a value of a one asset is fixed on the basis of other underlying assets. So, derivative markets is having a four important wings. So, we can also call it as derivatives in finance. So, the four important wings are forwards, futures, options, and swaps. So, derivative market stands on these four important legs. So, today we are going to discuss about the topic called forwards and futures. So these are the areas of a derivative markets in which we are using. So derivative markets are widely used in stock exchange markets, bonds markets, commodity markets, currencies market, interest rates, market indices. A most used type of derivatives are commodity derivatives and currency derivatives. So let us know about what is derivative market in brief. A derivative is used to refer to a financial instruments which derive their value from some underlying assets. As discussed before, it is a financial instruments. It is just like some other financial instruments, just like bonds, shares, debentures. It is also one of a financial instruments in which a value of a one assets is derived from a value of a other underlying assets. The best example is, as I said before, the underlying assets could be equities, debt, treasury bills, currencies, and even the market indexes. Derivatives contract are bought and sold by a large number of individual institutions and others for a variety of purposes. So these derivative tradings will be settled between two parties for many benefits. So it is very useful for a counterparties to gain to hedge in the future market. When the prices of underlying assets changes, the value of a derivative also changes. So, usually the assets price will not be same forever. Just like a currency exchange rate. So currency exchange rates are not same from the years and it is not same from day after day. So it will be fluctuating day by day according to a market factors like demand and supply. Same in the derivative market, a value of an asset will be changed on the basis of a demand, supply, productivity of a product. So based on this, a value of a derivatives will be fluctuated in the market. Example, the value of a gold future contracts is derived from a value of underlying asset that is gold. So this example we can understand in the future slides. So, let us quickly know about the history of a derivative market in India. So, Indian derivative market. So, a Bombay Cotton Trade Association started future trading in 1875. So in India, in the year 1875, a future contract was started by Bombay Cotton Trade. Later in the 1952, a government of India banned cash settlement and option trading. So option is one of an important wing of derivative market, as we said before. So in 1952, government of India banned the option transaction. Later in 1995, a prohibition of trade option was lifted, which is nothing but this banned contract was cancelled by government of India. In year 1999, the Security Control Act of 1956 was amended and derivatives trading could be declared securities, which means a legal permission was granted by government of India to trade a derivative transactions in India. So NSE, so National Stock Exchange, started trading in futures and options by 2005. Means in the year 2005, NSE, which is nothing but National Stock Exchange, started to trade futures and options. So this is about a small history about the derivative markets in India. So next, let us understand what do you mean by forward contract. So forward and futures are two important wings of derivative market, as I said before. So let us understand what do you mean by forward contract. A forward contract is a contract made today for delivery of an asset at a prescribed time in the future at a price agreed upon today. So, before understanding the meaning of a forwards, let us understand the meaning about the spot market and forward market. So, spot market, what do you mean by spot market? For example, we want a 2 kgs of carrot. So, we are going to a market and we are getting a contract and we are getting a carrots. In return we are paying the money, which is nothing but a spot transaction. A spot transaction is a type of transaction in which a transaction will be succeeded at immediately. So under this contract we are getting a carrots and immediately we are paying a cash. We are not postponing any contract to the future. So in case if we are paying money today, we are getting a carriage after 3 months. It is nothing but a forward contract. But we are paying money now and we are getting a carriage immediately, which is nothing but a spot market. So these for spot market and future markets are two important categories of a markets for trading and settlement process. So in the forward contract, as a meaning says, a transaction will not be succeeded in the spot time, but instead a transaction will be takes place in the future time, which is determined today and on the basis of a price fixed today. The buyer of a forward contract agrees to take delivery of an underlying asset at a future time at a price agreed upon today. No money changes hands until the time expiry. So, let us take one example. So, in this example, there are two counterparties. So, that is farmer and a bread maker. So, in this example, a farmer is a seller and a bread maker is a buyer. So, in this example, a farmer is a seller and a bread maker is a buyer. So, farmer wants to sell his wheat and a bread maker wants to buy a meat for a processing of a wheat into a bread. So, in this contract, it is not a spot market. So, it is not a spot transaction. If in case if it is a spot transaction, a transaction would be succeeded immediately. But in this example, what they are saying is, farmer says that I agrees to sell 500 kgs of wheat at rupees 40 per kg after 3 months to a bread maker. So in this example, a farmer is fixing rupees 40 per kg of wheat for 500 kgs and this transaction will be succeeding after 3 months. So in this contract, both the parties agrees for the contract. So that is a farmer and the bread maker. So after 3 months, a farmer will forward his crop, that is a wheat, to the bread maker. In exchange, a bread maker will return a some amount of rupees 20,000 to the farmer. So in this example, entire forward contract or entire forward transaction can be understood easily. So in this, they are not exchanging a goods or cash or any transaction or spot market basis. In this example, transaction is not taking place for immediately, but transactions which are fixed today are going to be succeeded in the future date, that is after 3 months. So a price of a contract is fixed today, quantity of a contract is also fixed today, and amount of a contract is also fixed today. So time is also we are fixing today. So a transaction will be takes place in the future on the price fixed today, quantity fixed today, and the time fixed today. So both the parties will be beneficial by entering into a forward contract. So this is about the forward contract. Next one is underlying assets of forward contracts. So which is nothing but which are the assets which are trading simultaneously in the forward contract. First one is traditional agricultural or physical commodities. So forward contracts are widely used in the traditional agricultural products. So like mangoes, jackfruits. So mostly farmers are using this contract widely. Why? Because they need to sell their crops for someone and they want to get a benefit in the long run. Next one is currencies. So forward contracts are widely used in the currency exchange market and interest rate. So interest rate to hedge the risk of interest rate fluctuation. Usually the people will go with the forward contract. Next one is why forward contract. So why we need a forward contract? Forward contract or customized contract unlike future. So forward is completely different from the future contract. So we are going to discuss about the future contracts later. So let us understand why forward contracts are needed. They are a customized contract. So customized is nothing but we can change, or it is a user friendly contract. User friendly is nothing but users in the sense a buyer and seller. So the contract is not that rigid. It is flexible to the extent that terms of contract can be fluctuated among both buyers and sellers. For example, a value fixed is 5,000 rupees. So on the agreed values of both buyer and sellers, they can change the value to 6,000 or they can reduce the value to the 4,000. So it is customized and it can be changed by both the parties whenever they are needed. So it is not that rigid and it is not that regulated. Second one, tailor made and more suited for certain purpose. So tailor made is nothing but it is not regulated by any recognized exchanges and it is not regulated by any strong boards like SEBI, RBI. So it is a tailor made contract, which is nothing but it is a contract, just a contract between buyer and seller, and it is not registered. So it is suited for certain purpose. Next one is useful when future do not exist for commodities and financials being considered. So future markets, so we are discussing later, useful when future markets do not exist. So these forward market are suitable for commodities in which they are not used as instruments in the future market. So for those assets which are not having a place in a future markets, they can trade in the forward market. Next one is useful in case future standards may be differed from the actual. So if in case we can predict that in the future a value may reduces, or we can predict that in the future a value may rises, so easily we can enter into a forward contract and we can earn the benefit. For example, today mango price, think today a price of a mango is 50 per kg. What the price of a mango is 50 rupees per kg. A farmer predicts that after 1 month a price may falls to 40 rupees. So according to his prediction, a price of a mango today per kg is 50 rupees. After 1 month it is going to fell down to 40 rupees. So in this example, a farmer is feeling that a prices of a mango will be reduced by rupees 10 per kg. So during this type of his predictions, he can enter into a forward contract with the buyer. So according to this contract, a farmer will agree that he will provide 100 kgs of mangoes to a seller after 1 month at a price of rupees 50 per kg. So 100 into 50 is nothing but 5,000 rupees. For rupees 5,000, a farmer is selling the mangoes. So according to his predictions, after 1 month, a price of a mango will dip down to 40 rupees per kg. So 100 into 40, it will be a market price of a mangoes will be a 4,000 rupees, but a contract price is 5,000 rupees. So by entering into a forward contract, a farmer can get a benefit of rupees 1,000 in the short run. So he can avoid the losses or he can hedge the losses. So this is why forward contracts are needed. Next one is specifically made for particular purpose. So it is a tailor made. As I said, it is a tailor made in which it can be customized according to the needs of a buyer and seller. Why? Because quantity, price, date, region to region. So quantity, price, date and the place of delivery will be fixed by a buyer and seller. So it is tailor made and it can be customized according to a need of both the parties. Next one is features of forward contract. Features are nothing but a characteristics of forward contract. They are a bilateral negotiated contract between two parties and exposed to a counterparty risk. So bilateral. So as the name says, a bilateral is nothing but it is an agreement between two parties. That is a buyer of a contract and another one is a seller of a contract. So if in case of price fluctuate, either the person has to bear the losses. So there is always a counterparty risk. Counterparties is nothing but a buyer and a seller. So if a price rises or if a price falls, either the party has to face the risk of a price fluctuations. Second one is each contract is custom designed and it is unique in terms of contract size, expiry date and the asset type, quality, etc. So as I said before, it is a customized contract, which means it is not regulated by any exchanges and there is no particular rules and regulations for designing of a forward contract and there is no legal term for designing of a forward contract. So because of this, our forward contracts are not same always. It will be a fluctuated in the terms of quantity, quality, asset, expiry date. So expiry date is not fixed for 3 months. It may be a 15 days, it may be 1 week, it may be 1 year, it may be 6 months, it may be 8 months. So it is not a standardized contract. No standards are fixed for a forward market transaction. Next one, a contract has to be settled in the delivery or cash on expiry date. So a contract can be settled on the actual delivery of a goods and a cash. For example, a seller is going to sell the, if for example, a contract is fixed for a commodity like rice. So for a rice, a forward contract is designed means after the expiry date, a commodity that is rice will be transferred from a seller to the buyer, and a cash will be settled from the buyer to the seller. Next one is a contract price is generally not available in the public domain, which is in the sense it is not an automated price, like a value of a share will be fixed automatically. For example, a Nifty 50. So these are the indexes, and Nifty are the two indexes of a stock market. So like that, for a forward markets, there is no particular indexes to fix the price for a product. It will be only based on the predictions of our buyers and sellers. If a party wishes to reverse the contract, it has to be compulsorily go to the same counterparty, which often results in the high prices being charged. For example, either the buyer or seller wants to cancel the contract. He can't go to any regulatory body. Instead, he has to go to the other counterparty. For example, if a buyer wants to cancel the contract, means he has to go to the seller. If a seller wants to cancel the contract, means he has to consult the buyer. If they want to cancel the contract, the high prices will be lost for any one of a counterparty. So next one is about advantages and disadvantages of forward contract. So as we know, both advantages and disadvantages are like a two faces of a same coin. So for the coin, we are having a two faces. So like that, for everything, there is both advantages and disadvantages. Let us understand what are the advantages of forward contracts. First one is no upfront fees. No upfront fees in the sense, in the forward contract, there is no concept called advances. Advances in the sense, unless the expiry date, no cash will be transferred from a buyer of a contract to the seller of a contract. So, a cash transaction or a cash will be settled only after the expiry date of a contract. The second one is no risk due to currency fluctuations, completely eliminated. So, there is a huge risk. The main important risk is a foreign exchange risk, or it is also called as currency fluctuation risk. By entering into a forward contract, a counterparties can avoid the currency fluctuation risk. For example, today a price of one mobile is a $50. Think a $50. Think a price of a $1 today is 60 rupees. If after 3 months a 60 rupees per dollar may rise to 90 rupees per dollar. So to avoid these huge fluctuation in currency prices, a counterparty may enter into a forward contract. So as I said before, in the forward contract, the price will be fixed today. Whatever may be the future prices, they will ignore the future prices, but they will consider the price which is fixed today and which is fixed now, and the time will also be fixed today. So there is no risk of a currency fluctuation. Next one is forwards or over the counter products. So over the counter is nothing but, there are two types of markets. So that is nothing but, over the counter is nothing but, there is no a particular or regulated marketplace for the forward contract. For example, stocks are traded in the stock exchanges. So debentures are traded in the stock exchanges. Those shares or those stocks or debentures which are not listed or which are not traded in the recognized stock exchanges will be traded in the OTC market. So OTC market, or it is just like an unregulated, or it is just like there is no fixed place for a market transactions. There is nothing but OTC market. For forward also, there is no a particular marketplace, and there is no a particular regulatory body, and there is no a middleman for a forward contract. So it is a over the counter market. Next one is, it offers a complete hedge. Hedge is nothing but, by investing in some other asset, we can avoid a loss caused by one asset. For example, we are expecting a 5,000 rupees loss by investing in the Infosys company share. Think we have already invested in the Infosys company share and we are speculating or predicting that we may occur a loss of rupees 5,000 rupees due to a market fluctuation. So we have to cover up this loss of rupees 5,000. So and we are at the same time we are predicting that a Wipro company share may rises by 5,000 by next month. So we are expecting a loss of rupees 5,000 by Infosys company share. At the same time we are expecting a 5,000 rupees gain by investing in Wipro company share. So to avoid a 5,000 loss caused by Infosys company share, we are investing in the Wipro company shares, which is nothing but hedging. A value of loss can be avoided by investing a same amount of loss coverage in some other asset. So these forward contracts is one of the important tool of hedging. So by entering into a few forward contracts, we can hedge the risk or we can avoid a losses in the future. Next one is the use of forward provides a price protection. Means it is a prices are fixing today. So a transaction will be takes place not on the market price. But so please understand carefully. So the transaction is not succeeded on the basis of market prices. It is based on the price fixed today or predetermined prices. So whatever may be the market prices, the forward contracts will not be affected. Next one is they are easy to understand. So there is no any regulatory body. So there is no proper rules and regulations for a forward contracts. So it are easy to understand. Next one is disadvantages of forward contract. So it requires tying up capital. There is no intermediaries cash flows before settlement. So there is no intermediaries between a buyer and seller. So at any time the contract can be reopened by both buyer and seller. So there is no securities of being entering into a forward contract. Next one, it is subjected to default risk. So always it tend to a market risk. Why? Because due to the price fluctuation and currency fluctuations. Next one is contract may be difficult to cancel. So few times these contracts are very difficult to cancel. So in case we need to cancel also, we have to pay losses for a other counterparty. There may be a difficult to find the counterparty. So counterparty is nothing but for a buyer, seller is a counterparty. For seller, buyer is a counterparty. So for buyer, it is very difficult to find the seller. For a seller, it is very difficult to find a buyer. So these are the four disadvantages of forward contract. Next one is a future contract. So future. So don't confuse between a forward and futures. Both forward and future sounds the same. The meaning is also the same. But the major important difference between forward and future is that for a future contract, there is a middleman or there is a regulatory body called clearing houses. These future contracts are recognized or undertaken by a recognized stock exchanges in India like NSE, BSE. So it is regulated by Securities Exchange Board of India. So let us know the meaning. So like a forward contracts, our terms and conditions for a future contract is same. But the difference is forward contracts are not regulated by any regulatory body, but future contracts are reliable standardized contract in which there is a middleman called clearing house between a buyer and seller. So because of this middleman, these contracts are standardized. So to enter the future contract, both buyer and seller has to follow certain rules and regulations, or they have to follow certain predetermined norms by a recognized stock exchanges. So let us know the meaning. Futures or standardized contract traded on the exchanges. In the last slide, we saw that these forwards are over the counter market. As I said before, there is no a proper place for entering into a forward contract. But future contracts are not like that. They are traded only on the exchanges. Exchanges is nothing but recognized exchanges through a clearing house and awards a counterparty risk through margin money and much more. So these transactions will be completed only with the help of clearing houses. So these clearing houses should be recognized by the SEBI. So future contracts are regulated and will be completed only with the help of a clearing houses. So these future contracts are more standardized when compared to the forward contract. Just like you are getting money from a money lender. So money lender, you are getting a money. A future contract example is you are getting a loan from the bank. So this is a difference. So to get a loan from the bank, we have a certain predetermined rules and regulation. But to get a money from a private lender, there is not a regulatory body, or there is no, of course rules and regulation will be there, but there is no regulatory framework to get a debt amount from a bank. And there is a huge difference between getting a loan from a bank and getting a loan from a private lender. So these futures are a standardized contract. So let us know the brief history about future contracts. Trading in futures originated in Japan during 18th century and was primarily used for trading of rice and silk. So these future contracts was introduced in Japan during 18th century for trading of rice and silk. It was not until in 1850s that the US started using future market to buy and sell a commodity such as cotton, corn and wheat. So in the 1850s, USA, that is United States of America, used a future contract for trading of cotton, corn and wheat. So today, future market is a global marketplace for not only agriculture goods but also for currencies, financial instruments such as treasury bond, securities. It is a diverse meeting place for a farmers, exporter, importers, manufacturers and speculators. So which is nothing but before 18th century it was used only for country, means for a domestic basis, but today future markets are using for international trade transaction. So this future market is using a global wide, a worldwide for a transaction between two countries. So today in the globalized market, future contracts are playing a very important role among importers, exporters, manufacturers, and speculators. Even the speculators are earning a huge amount of profits by entering into a future contracts. So now today our future contracts are useful for international trade transactions. So let us see one example. So clearing house. So in the forward contracts also we discussed about one example, but in that example there is no middleman called a clearing corporation. So in this example there are two parties, that is a future seller and a future buyer. So there is a middleman called a clearing corporation. So in this contract, a future seller is not directly dealing with the future buyer, but instead there is a middleman called a clearing corporation. In this example, a future seller sell a future contract to clearing corporation and a future buyer will buy a contract from a clearing corporation. So even after the expiry date, even after the time and on the date of expiry, the payment will be made by a clearing corporation to the future seller and a product will be delivered to an actual buyer from a clearing corporation. This it is nothing but just like a RBI SEBI. How SEBI is regulating the stock transaction. For example, if we want to buy Wipro company shares, so we are not directly purchasing from Wipro. Instead, we are buying from a recognized stock exchanges like Bombay Stock Exchanges. So we are getting a help of a Bombay Stock Exchanges. So just like National Securities Clearing Corporation Limited, so they are one who taking a responsibility of a security transaction in India. So just like NSDL, CDSL, so they are settling a trade transaction between a buyer and seller. If we want to buy a stock, so with the help of a broker, we are purchasing from a recognized stock exchanges, not directly from the seller. So just like a stock transactions, these future transactions takes place. So a clearing house acts as a middleman between a future seller and a future buyer. So just like in the forward contract, in the future contract also, a price will be fixed today, a time will be fixed today, a quantity of a transaction will also be fixed today. So, but the difference is in the forward contract, there is no middleman, but in the future contract, there is a middleman called as a clearing corporation. So, next one, what is future contract? So, future contract is a standardized agreement between a seller of a contract and a buyer traded on the future exchange to buy or sell a certain underlying instrument at a certain date in a future at a prescribed price. So, a most important term is at a predetermined price, at a fixed price, at a certain date in future, which means a price we are fixing today, quantity we are fixing today, quality we are fixing today, price we are fixing today, but the transaction will be succeeded in the future determined date, which is determined on today. Means a contract will be succeeded in the future date, which is fixed today. So but the difference is a future contract are settled only with the help of middleman. So that middleman is nothing but a clearing corporation, or a one which is recognized by the SEBI. So it may be NSE, BSE. So they should be recognized by SEBI before acts as a clearing corporation between a buyer and a seller. So few important terms. Identifying with the underlying asset. Underlying asset is nothing but for which products we are entering into a contract. For example, in the commodity market, there is a huge demand for a pepper. So in the Indian commodity market, we are entering into a contract with the pepper and spices. So underlying asset, for which assets we are entering into a contract, should be determined. Next one is identify with the contract size. Contract size is nothing but price and quantity of a contract. Next one is delivery arrangement, place of delivery, transportation or transfer cost. So while entering into a contract, both buyer and seller has to be defined the place of delivery. Place of delivery is nothing but in on the expiry date where the buyer is getting the actual delivery of a goods and how a cash will be settled for the buyer. It may be in the cash, or it may be in the electronic fund transfer, or it may be in the form of hard cash. How the buyer is getting a cash and how the buyer is getting a product and how the seller is getting a cash in return. It has to be determined during the time of contract itself. How a seller is getting the money, by check or by electronic fund transfer, for which account the amount will be credited by the buyer to the seller has to be fixed. At the same time, where a buyer is getting a product, who is bearing a transportation cost or a transfer cost, so that things has to be clearly determined. Next one is identify with delivery month. Delivery month is nothing but the contract date may be varied. It may be after 3 months, it may be after 6 months. So the date of delivery should be clearly defined between both the parties. Next one is identified with a prescribed price. As I said before, for example, we are dealing with the 100 quintals of rice. So, what is the price fixed per quintal? It may be 10,000 or it may be 20,000. It should be determined in advance before entering into a contract between both the parties. Next one is position limits. A limits of both buyer and seller has to be specified properly. Next one is margin requirement. So in the future contracts, margin requirements is very important concept. What do you mean by margin? Let us understand. A future exchange requires some good faith, money from both to act as a guarantee that each will abide by the terms of a contract, that is margin. For example, a trust is very important in each and every transaction. So we can't trust a other counterparty. Why? Because for a buyer, seller is not a relative or seller is not a neighbor. He don't know who is a seller, or he may be meeting a seller for the first time. For seller also, the buyer is not a for relative, or buyer is not a friend, or buyer is not a neighbor. So both are two strangers or two unknown person. So they can't trust on one another. So that's why they are getting a help of a middleman called clearing houses. So in the future contract, both the parties, which is nothing but buyer and seller, has to deposit certain amount based on the contract size with the clearing corporation. For example, just example I am giving, think a contract size is 1 lakh rupees, which is nothing but seller is agreed to sell a goods worth rupees 1 lakh to the buyer after 3 months. So the value of a contract is 1 lakh rupees. So the clearing house asks for a margin money. Margin money is nothing but based on the contract size, a margin money will be fixed. For example, a margin amount is 20%. For 1 lakh rupees transaction, 20% is nothing but 20,000 and 20,000 for both the parties. So both the parties has to deposit certain margin amount with the clearing corporation or middlemen, which is nothing but 20,000 and 20,000. If in case one party fails to meet his contract, or in case of default, for in case of a default either by a buyer or either by a seller, so in order to avoid a loss occurs due to the default of these two counterparties, so the middleman, that is nothing but clearing house, is getting a margin money. If in case buyer revokes the contract, these 40,000 will be compensated for the seller. Or if a seller revokes the contract, a margin amount will be compensated to a buyer. So just as a safety purpose, these both the parties will require a margin amount from both the buyer and seller. Just know the meaning. It acts as a guarantee. So, for example, in the bank, a minimum balance should be 5,000, which is nothing but a margin. To provide a safe deposit lockers for a customers, the banks ask for a FDs, which is nothing but fixed deposit for 50,000, 10,000. If we keep FD for 50 or 1 lakh, the bank will provide a locker for the public. So just like they are getting a margin amount for a safety purpose. So because of this, the clearing house requires the margin. If in case of a default of any counterparty, he can compensate the amount for a party who incurred loss from the transaction. This margin can be of three types: initial margin, maintenance margin, and third one is variable margin. First, understand a initial margin. Initial margin is nothing but a certain percent of a margin fixed by a clearing corporation. So initial is nothing but a certain minimum margin fixed by the exchanges. Second one is maintenance margin. So it is also just like a minimum margin which has to be maintained by individual margin accounts. It is to maintain balance prescribed by a bank in case of SB account. So just in the bank how they are getting a minimum balance. For example, in the bank we always has to maintain the minimum balance of rupees 500, even the transaction takes place or even the transaction does not takes place. So 500 is always a minimum limit until the closure of a account. So just like that, always a counterparties who are dealing with the future contract has to be always keep a safe minimum margin with the exchanges. Next one is variable margin. Variable margin is nothing but a margin amount will be fluctuated and it will be changing from market to market. For example, in the Bombay Stock Exchange, the margin will be different. For a same product or for the same quantity of a goods in the NSE, the margin will be different. Means from one exchange to another exchange, the margin amount will be varies. Next one is a settling of forward contracts. So settling is nothing but how forward contracts will be settled. Means after a future date or after the expiry date, a settling can be takes place in three ways. First one is physical delivery. Physical delivery is nothing but a seller will provide actual goods or actual promised goods to the buyer, and a buyer will settle the transaction cost to the seller. So that is nothing but physical delivery. Next one is offsetting. Offsetting is nothing but, for example, think I am a buyer and I am entered into a future contract with some seller for 1,000 tons of rice. So, thousand if I purchase 1,000 tons of rice means again I have to sell the 1,000 tons of rice to a third party. That is nothing but offsetting. So I am not purchasing a goods for my own, but instead I am purchasing a goods for a further selling. So by further selling I can attain the profit in the market. For example, I am purchasing 1,000 tons of rice at rupees 1 lakh rupees per ton. So what example I am saying, I am purchasing 1,000 tons of rice at rupees 1 lakh rupees per ton. Means I am purchasing a rice 1 ton at a 1 lakh rupees. Again, for that purchase goods, I have to enter to a sale transaction, which means I am buying the rice. Means for buying a rice I entered into a contract. For selling a rice also I am entering into a contract with some third person. Means I am purchasing at 1 lakh rupees but I am selling a same at 1 lakh 2,000 rupees. Means for 1 ton I am getting a profit of rupees 2,000 rupees. So for 1,000 tons, 1,000 into 2,000, so I am getting a profit around 20 lakhs by entering into a contract. So this is nothing but offsetting. Offsetting is nothing but by entering into a contract with some other party, a counterparty is gaining the benefit. In this example we can see that a person is purchasing 1,000 grams of gold at 27 lakh. So again he is selling a same gold at 28 lakh. So he is gaining a profit of rupees 1 lakh in a small period of time. So in this example we can understand clearly. So a person is purchasing a gold for 27 lakhs in the future market, and again he is selling a gold at rupees 28 lakhs in the future market itself, and he is gaining a benefit of rupees 1 lakh. Next one is cash delivery. So cash delivery is nothing but for in case this procedure is subtitle for physical delivery and completely eliminates to have or takes a physical delivery. For example, instead of a physical delivery of a goods, a transaction will be settled by transferring a profit. So what the profits and gains that we are earning from the contract, instead of a physical delivery we are delivering the cash. Means certain gain part or certain loss part will be transferred to a third party. Next one is types of future contract. So this future contract can be classified into two types. First one is commodity futures, second one is a financial futures. So usually in the commodity futures we are dealing with the metals, energy, food and fiber. In the financial futures We are dealing hugely with the euro dollar bonds, euro dollar futures, US treasury futures, foreign government debt futures, swaps, forex futures, etc. So, and the next very important concept is a difference between a forward contract and future contract. So, let us discuss. A forward contract is an agreement between two parties to buy or sell an asset at a pre-agreed future price at a specified price. But forward contracts is a standardized contract. It's not a standardized contract. In the forward contracts, there is no middleman called a clearing house, but in a future contracts, it is a standardized contract traded on a future exchange to buy and sell a certain underlying instrument. So these forwards are OTC market, but these futures are traded in the recognized exchanges, so it is more standardized when compared to forward market. So forward market are customized or it can be changed according to the needs of a counterparties, but future contracts are a standardized contract and initial margin is provided in the future contract. There is no concept of initial margins in the forward contract, but there is a compulsion concept of an initial margin in the future contract. So compared to forward, futures are more safety and more reliable. Next one is negotiated directly by a buyer and seller. Future contracts are quoted and traded on the exchanges. So these forward contract is agreement between, it is a direct agreement between buyer and seller, but future contracts are a trade or it is a quoted by a recognized stock exchanges. Next one is forward contracts are not regulated, but future contracts are a government regulated market. The Commodity Future Trading Commission is a governing body. So CFTC is a governing body for a future contract, but for the forward contracts, there is no regulatory body. So next one is a forward contract. The parties or the contracting parties in the future contract clearing houses. So institutional guarantee. So for the forward contract there is no proper institutional guarantees, but for a future contract there is an institutional guarantee called a clearing house. So as we discussed before, a transaction will be takes place only with the help of a clearing houses. So that's why our future contracts are very more reliable. That too we are having a margin amount, so it is always safety to enter into a future contract. Risk related to risk, forward contracts is related to high counterparty risk, future contract is related to less counterparty risk because of a margin amount. Next one is guarantee. So in the forward contracts there is no guarantee for a successful settlement of a contract on the maturity date, but in the future contract both the parties will be depositing a margin amount. So because of this margin amount, for sure the transaction will be succeeded. If in case the transaction fails, a counterparty has to lose the margin amount that he is deposited with the clearing corporation. Next one is contract maturity. Forward contract generally mature by delivery the commodity, but in the future contract not necessarily mature the actual delivery of the commodities. As we discussed earlier, a future contracts can be settled by a physical delivery or by offsetting, and third one is cash clearances. So in the future contract actual physical delivery is not required. By delivering a profit and losses margin also can be succeeded in the future market. Next one is expiry date. So in the forward contracts, depending on the transaction or depending on the decision of a counterparty's forward contract will be fixed. But in the future market these transactions are very much standardized, means our dates are standardized, it will be fixed on the standardized basis unlike forward contracts. So these are the two differences between, these are the differences between a forward contract and future contract. So next we are having options and swaps.